Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming on the Onyx Path Publishing YouTube channel. This video is going to be a little bit of a teaser for Mummy the Curse 2nd edition. And the reason I'm doing it is because a lot of people have now read the manuscripts for Dark Eras 2 and the Contagion Chronicle, the latter of which is currently on Kickstarter and the former of which is available on BackerKit. And those two books, other than everything else they contain concepts, characters and powers for Mummy the Curse, Hunter the Vigil and Deviant the Renegades. Now, why is that important? Well, those three books aren't out yet. And so several people have asked, how are you going to ensure that the ideas that you present in these books are going to marry up to the second editions of Hunter and Mummy and the first edition of Deviant? And it's a good question, and the simple answer is communication. There are many developers working on these books, and so we talk openly with each other to ensure that no ideas end up completely out of whack. However, it's especially easy for me because I'm co-developing Dark Eras 2, developing Contagion Chronicle, and developing Mummy the Curse, so making sure mummies are consistent throughout all of these games isn't too much of a hardship. That said, I realised that we haven't really spoken a great deal about Mummy the Curse 2nd edition, Onyx Path, and it isn't because of any great veil of secrecy, it's just because I've been working hard on it, as have the authors, for the last few months, and Red Lines will very soon be going back to authors. Usually, I like to hold back on announcing anything before the game is closer to release, but I've been a bit excited about Mummy the Curse because I'm in the throes of Red Lines, and so there were some things I wanted to share with you that will hopefully interest you too. Now, I know for a lot of people Mummy, whether in the World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness, hasn't been their game. There's something about the idea of playing eternal immortals, if you like, that is off-putting. They feel like there's no challenge to it. Other people get a little daunted by the mythology surrounding it, especially Mummy the Curse, because it has a mythology that has all but been created from whole cloth for this particular game. It uses a lot of language and terminology that you may never have read or heard before, and that can be off-putting to some players. And I acknowledge that, I see it. I'm a big fan of Mummy. I think Mummy the Curse 1st edition is a brilliant game, but I can still acknowledge the parts that some players struggle with, because I've ran it several times and players have voiced these things to me. I've found it as well, quite frankly. It takes a while to associate the guild names, the Marquette, the Seshahebsu, the Sumanet, and so on, with what those types of characters do, because for most of us that isn't a language that we speak fluently or even naturally. And part of that adds to the mystique of the game. Part of it, however, can act as a barrier to entry. And one of the things I was very keen on doing with Mummy the Curse 2nd edition was demolishing some of those barriers. The guilds are still going to have the same names, but they are going to have incredibly accessible subtitles that give you clues as to what those kinds of guilds do. My go-to idea on this is the fact that in Dungeons and Dragons, the classes you play tell you exactly what those characters are before you even start playing them. And so I want Mummy the Curse's guilds to do the same thing. I find the same for Promethean, actually. I find that as soon as you look at a picture of a Promethean and see what the subtitle is, I can tell what kind of creature that is. Whereas in Mummy, 1st edition, it wasn't obvious. In 2nd edition, it will be. So, for instance, the Marquette are now subtitled as names like the Spies, the Junta, and the Secret Police, that kind of thing. It brings to mind the kind of character you're playing. The Tef Arpi are now the new pharaohs among being Masons and so on. So we have presented each of these guilds in a far more accessible way. One of the things that really excites me about Mummy the Curse 2nd edition is one of the things that first drew me to developing 2nd edition. When I pitched it to Rich Thomas, my idea was, why should mummies exist on a linear timeline? Why should they exist at a static point in time? Mummies are not housed in their bodies when they are sleeping. Their souls, if you like, are drifting somewhere in Duat, going through an impossible torments, only to be judged by their judge at the end of their journey. Are they deserving? Are they left wanting? And if the latter, most often the latter, the judge will place them back in their sahu, their shell, their body, and they will wake up at a time that is appropriate. Usually it is because Sothis, an astronomical event, has ascended, or perhaps it's because their cult has summoned them, or maybe their tomb has been disturbed. Now, that was always the way in first edition, and I had no issue with that, but I really wanted to expand on it. And part of that expansion comes up in the Reign of Terror era for Dark Eras 2, if you've read that already, where an event with a great deal of bloodshed and essentially what could be construed as necromancy, a necromantic act, even if there's not a magician behind it, an act of great slaughter is enough to start stirring some mummies from their slumber, because they are creatures of necromancy. They are eternal spirits, if you like. That's one way, but the other thing I wanted to get to the bottom of was this idea of the Timeless Chronicle. The idea that they exist outside of time. They are timeless beings. I feel like one of the biggest keys to the experience point mystery of Mummy the Curse is allowing them to exist at various points in time at the same time, or basically out of order. So, to explain, in Mummy the Curse First Edition, when you first create your character, you are in the modern era and you have starting level experience points. However, your character was made a mummy several thousand years prior to that, so does that make a great deal of sense to you? I would put it to you that it does not. So, what if that is just the first time you've woken up since you were made into a mummy? Now, there's nothing to say the next time you wake up can't be after that in a linear time sense, but there's nothing to say that your character can't wake up before then either. Because if we take that the judges are cosmic, godlike entities, then mummies aren't exactly stuck in the mortal laws of time and space. So this explains why, if your characters are first created in 2019 or 2020, your characters may well have starting level experience, because that is just the first time they've woken since they were first cursed in Irem, the Nameless Empire. But the next time might be during the Reign of Terror. It may be during the height of Imperial Rome. It could be during the Crusades in Jerusalem or wherever. This concept allows you also to play with the memory idea of your character. That in Mummy the Curse, your character starts with minimal memory, but a great deal of power. And as your character is awake for longer, serves their judge, serves their cult, does whatever it is they need to do, the memory increases but the power decreases. It's one of the most striking concepts from Mummy the Curse that really drew a lot of people in to first edition. It certainly drew my attention. Now, what would it mean in game if your mummy is out on the sea with the Vikings and suddenly remembers how to drive a car, how to operate a computer, how to speak a language that isn't really widely spoken yet? Because their memory is going up. And because the time before this one, they were awake in the future. Now, they may not be able to build a PC, they may not be able to manufacture a car at that time, but they can start applying modern knowledge to historic events. And I particularly like that, because it plays a little with the kind of thing I like in They Came From Beneath the Sea. It's a bit of permissiveness to use meta-knowledge in a game. And if we, again, take that mummies are pretty much godlike creatures in their power, at least when they wake up, why should they not have godlike reach of memory as well, once they reach that level? So Mummy the Curse is now a game that is designed to be played in whatever timeline order you like. If anything, it is now the game that best suits the Dark Era's books, because you can play every single Dark Era and you don't even have to play them in order with Mummy the Curse. And I think that's something that will hopefully appeal to a lot of people. Certainly the people I've spoken to about this found it quite intriguing. Now, beyond that, what else are we going to be offering in Mummy the Curse 2nd Edition that we weren't able to in 1st Edition? Well, I am a big fan of antagonists, as anyone who has watched these videos will know, and that's why I love Werewolf the Forsaken. Well, I felt like Mummy needed more antagonists, because there are some fantastic ones in 1st Edition. You have your Schwachsen, you have your Amchat, and you have your Deceived. But after that it starts trailing off. You have your mortal cults, your sort of scorpion cults and so on. Well, I started thinking more widely. In Dark Era's Companion, which is just over my shoulder, I introduced sorcerer cults, because they were alluded to in Mummy the Cursed First Edition but never detailed until Dark Era's Companion, and I decided I'd put them in there and explain how they work. So what that means now is you can basically have cultists on different tiers of power, and the different tier of power your cultist is on determines how much power you can invest in your cultist. Mummies are built up with pillars of power, and you can basically plant those pillars like a phylactery, like a lich with a phylactery, in a cultist. Now, if it's a mortal cultist, you might be able to put 1 pillar in. If it's a sorcerer cultist, you might be able to put 2 in. If it's an immortal, you might be able to put 3 in. And this is where it starts getting interesting, because you will have some cultists who serve you no matter what, and you'll have some cultists that serve you because they want what you have. They want your power. They want that giddy rush of godlike power that you can bestow upon them, and they want the secret of immortality that you have. In a sense, they misleadingly believe that you have the perfect form of immortality because you just keep coming back from death. So you have sorcerer cultists who are, for the most part, greedy sorcerers who are prepared to conduct all kinds of horrible blood rituals to guarantee themselves a few more decades on Earth. But you also have your immortals from World of Darkness immortals. So you have your... oh, I'm just trying to think of some of the names now. You have your blood bathers, you have your eternals, you have all of the immortals, potentially, that existed in World of Darkness immortals in this book, in Mummy the Cursed 2nd Edition. And they can act as cultists that you can play, or they act as antagonists that may want to take you down and steal what you have. So now you can basically have these antagonists on your side or against you. They can be forming their own cults around themselves. And I was a big fan of World of Darkness Immortals, so having them available in Mummy the Cursed 2nd Edition was something I really strove to do, and we managed it, so very pleased with that. Now, another thing that I felt was important to do was really display the gamut of power that exists within Mummy the Curse. From a player perspective, yes, you wake with godlike powers, potentially the power to call down meteors to strike the Earth, through to you are the power of an elderly human, and now you're descending again. Well, we need antagonists that range in those power levels as well. So yes, you have your mortal cults and amcats all the way on that thinner end of the wedge, but at the bigger end, the wider end, you actually have the judges. So the judges were introduced in Mummy the Cursed First Edition as ostensibly your gods, or at least your judges at the end of your journey through Duat. And now, for some reason in 2nd Edition, as will become apparent, these judges can manifest in your game. Now see, I don't mind admitting where I take inspiration from, and I'm a big fan of Planescape, of the Forgotten Realms, of Dungeons and Dragons in general, and the idea that sometimes gods take avatars. I'm also a big fan of Lovecraft, and the idea that you can encounter the great old ones. You probably won't survive to tell anyone about it, but you can encounter them. I'm also, and most topically, a big fan of Werewolf the Forsaken and the Idagam as antagonists. And the Idagam are, if nothing else, cosmic entities, and they're probably a lot more besides that. Well, there's vague allusions in this game that the Idagam and the judges may have more connections than we initially thought. So we're putting a lot of work into Mummy the Cursed 2nd Edition to make it an intriguing game that still has the exact same core principles of 1st Edition. You can still play through the exact same types of chronicles you could the first time around, but I am a big proponent of giving the players more, giving storytellers more. I want to give you tools so you can play the game in as many ways as you like. And this is something I've tried to do with all the game books I have developed, whether source books or core books. And Mummy the Curse is a game that I am really hoping now, if it didn't before, I'm hoping it intrigues you. The idea that you can play at all of these levels, and you can play with so many different types of creatures, so many different powers, so many different timelines. And yeah, I think that it's going to leave players rather happy. I hope it will. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this teaser for Mummy the Curse 2nd Edition.